Okay, so here we have John M. or John Mason Peck, and the handout that I've sent around, there's two essays. We're going to look first at the one that's titled Early American Baptist Missionary. So that's the one we're going to start off with first, Early American Baptist Missionary. Okay, everybody see that? Just trying to save paper here, so I comboed some things. So this one here, Early Baptist American Missionary. Make sure everybody gets to that spot. Everybody there? Okay. Some of you on your sheets are going to have pictures of two men. Some of you are going to have pictures of one man. So if you have pictures of one man, then you're going to have the picture of John Mason Peck. Okay. If you have pictures of two men, then you've got this other picture right here. All right, and that is a picture of a fellow by the name of Daniel Parker, who is going to be the adversary of John Mason Peck. So those of you that don't have this picture, I'm showing you right now, so you get the privilege of seeing him. There you go. You enjoyed that. Never forget that moment. Special time in your life. Early Baptist American Missionary, J.M. Peck. The Triennial Convention was established there in 1814, and the first push for it was foreign missions. But soon after that, people recognized that there was a big frontier in America, and there was a mission field in America, and so they also began to collect funds and to support men that were going to not go to foreign fields but to stay in the States. And when Judson went to Burma, what's the name of his friend that ended up staying in the States promoting missions and stirring up churches and finances for missions? Yes? Okay, that was the one who stayed in England when Carey went overseas. So Andrew Fuller is the English counterpart of the man that I'm thinking of that did the same thing, similar thing in America. Sorry, Samuel Pierce did that too. Fuller and Pierce helped Carey. Anyway, Luther Rice. So Luther Rice wanted to go. In fact, he'd get on a ship to go with Judson, but separately, Judson and his wife became Baptists through studying the Scriptures. So did Luther Rice. Do you remember that? Luther Rice studied Scriptures, and he and Judson, I'm sure Judson thought, oh no, I'm going to lose my friend Luther Rice because I'm a Baptist now. And Luther Rice probably said, oh no, I'm going to lose my friend the Judsons because I've read Scripture and I've got to concur that I can't be a Congregationalist anymore and be supported by them. And what joy it must have been when they found out that each other had found this truth of Scripture independently. And they were able to maintain not just a close working relationship. Luther Rice gave his life to stir up the cause of missions and mission support in the States. John Mason Peck heard the preaching of Luther Rice and was stirred to missions himself. But the mission field that the Lord laid on his heart was the frontier, the crazy, wild area, west of Virginia, west of Pennsylvania, really wild, crazy places like Indiana, Illinois, and what's worse, if you don't cringe or like die of fright when I say this word, Missouri. Ooh. That's frightening. Thinking of Missouri, the inhabitants thereof. I mean, do they all dwell in tombs? They couldn't be bound by chains or fetters. John Mason Peck loved the unlovable. He turned lead into gold. He made lead golden. There is love for... All right, enough of the Missouri puns. He was born in Connecticut, 1789. Saved at the age of 18. I'm going to breeze through this because we got to look at his battles. Saved at the age of 18, joined the Congregational Church. In 1811, he and his wife moved to Windham, New York. Where's that at, Zach? Sarah? Geographically challenged. Wyndham, New York. There, a careful study of the Bible made him a Baptist. Almost immediately, he was ordained to preach and ordained at Catskill. Where's that at? Yeah. Up north. Up in the Catskills. The Catskills, is that Adirondacks? Up that way? Okay. Okay. In 1812. From the first, he was a missionary. His only pastorate being not much over a year's duration in Amenia. I don't know if there's an R missing there, if that's the name of it. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, New York. And he became acquainted with Luther Rice. Luther Rice was inspiring people, telling the story of Adoniram Judson over 200 years ago. People were being inspired by the life of Adoniram Judson, and Luther Rice told Peck about this, and Peck got a burden, as it says here, for what's called home missions or missions to the States, and that appealed to him. And so at the 1817 Triennial Convention, the second Triennial Convention, the first one was 1814, the second time it met, he was commissioned as a missionary to the region west of the Mississippi, and the rest of his life was spent in that work. It was a journey of 1,200 miles to an unknown country. I didn't write this, Trevor. I did not write this. I was mean, I know, but I did not write this next statement. Almost as heathen as Burma and far less civilized. Ouch. Ouch. Anyway, let us make no mistake. John Mason Peck was quite as heroic as Judson or Boardman. He got to St. Louis, found Cardinals fans. That's all they are down there. He became the apostle to the West. His labors were incredible in extent and variety, and though he had a constitution of iron, when you read about Peck, you'll find over and over again they talk about his manly constitution, his ruggedness, just his tenacity in the work and the physical toll that it took. And it says this, that he was an old man by the time he was 50 because of the demands of this pioneering frontier mission work, what it was in his life. In his first 3 years, he organized several churches, established 50 schools, Sunday schools, I'd say, and introduced a system of itinerant missions. In other words, itinerant means to hit different places and to rotate through them. And undertaken support for Isaac McCoy. You'll read about Isaac McCoy in a chapter or two. If we have time, we'll talk about him. You'll enjoy the missionary to the Indians. So like Peck was a missionary to the West, Isaac McCoy was a missionary to the West with a focus on the Indians. He had to deal with poverty, ignorance, and irreligion, but his case perils, in Peck's case, perils from false brethren were added to his physical challenges. False brethren. That's what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Anti-mission Baptists were strong at this time in Kentucky and made their way into Missouri and Illinois. Old, high and dry Calvinists, just like the ones William Carey had to battle against when he was in England. Same thing. They'd made their way from England to America, and these, what now we know of as primitive Baptists, just made missions work a great challenge, and they quenched the spirit of missions work through their beliefs. The Triennial Convention received complaints about the work that Peck was trying to do in evangelizing. And they let themselves be influenced by these anti-mission people. And sadly, around 1820, all support was withdrawn from this enterprise. Now, part of the reason was this. His chief enemy in the service of God was this Daniel Parker. And Daniel Parker was a let's just look at him here real quick. Here, J.M. Peck meets Daniel Parker. Let's look at that little essay. Just keep your eyes where we're at there on Peck. But Peck meets Parker. What's Daniel Parker? What's his deal? Why is he so against what Peck is trying to do? Second paragraph, Peck's trail visited churches and associations and met the famous, or as we know now, infamous Daniel Parker, politician, theologian, reactionary, and propagandist. He was shrewd and he was able, and he embodied the whole devilish spirit of the anti-mission crusade. He had a smooth tongue, considerable eloquence, and a genius for persistent proselytism. Interestingly, he proselytized Christians to his belief. He did not proselytize or evangelize lost to the gospel. In the light of present-day worldwide ideas, it's hardly possible to understand the bitter opposition to the Christian service which characterized the people of the smaller churches in the New West 100 years ago. This was written a while back. So, Peck comes to an association of Baptist churches in New Princeton, Indiana, and Peck's refused a seat in this Baptist association, treated as an outcast because of his zeal in missionary enterprises. He wanted to evangelize, start churches in the West. And Parker said, "Do you know how many preachers we have out here? And you're taking money from this board that could be used for something else? You're stealing from them. We don't need more preachers in the West. We have plenty of pastors out here. And you coming out here saying that we need pastors is an affront to us." Mr. Parker, on the other hand, was welcomed joyously and applauded for his opposition to this missionary activity. Mr. Peck, great-hearted and noble, says in his diary, "In my interview with Brother Parker, I alluded to his address about missions, and I told him I could cheerfully give him my hand as a conscientious and well-meaning, though greatly mistaken brother." So in other words, Peck said, I was willing to meet Daniel Parker, this Baptist preacher, and say, I'll give you my hand of fellowship, even though you're greatly mistaken. Well, the subject of missions comes up. Mr. Parker, third line, arose and delivered a fiery address denouncing all missionary effort in lurid and forceful terms. Peck obtained leave to speak and defended the missionary enterprises with great fervor. It was a memorable occasion. Two of the most noteworthy leaders of the religious thought and feeling of the 19th century were present face to face in the meeting of just a few humble churches. They spoke lightly and mightily. Their discussion lasted 5 hours. Peck must have appreciated the vigor of his antagonist, for he said, "I have never before met so determined an opposer to missions in every aspect." But the eloquent Parker, state senator, splendid man of affairs, religious leader, founder of a sect, and stalwart reactionary, received a startling rebuff. For the very association which had declined to recognize Peck and had refused him a seat 3 days before, voted to sustain the cause of missions and resolved by a formal vote to support the church, which had raised a contribution for the great cause. So Daniel Parker, for all his antagonism to a case of missions, was outdueled that day by John Mason Peck. This day in Baptist history has an entry about Daniel Parker. Liberty of conscience assured that Baptists would exhibit more diversity than any other denomination. That was proven here by the life of Daniel Parker. Anti-missionary leader, born in Virginia at 1781, moved to Georgia as a youth, raised in poverty, no academic training, but he developed a keen mind and was a great debater. Licensed to preach in Georgia, moved to Tennessee, and from there to Illinois in 1817. He condemned, in a moderator of a Baptist Church Association, he condemns missions, seminaries, and Bible societies. In 1820, he publishes a pamphlet, a tract, defending his views. He traveled through North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, and Texas. By the year 1826, his doctrine was fully developed in his mind. Take out your little sheet there that says a supplement or explanation of my views on the two seeds. This is his doctrine that he had developed and that he was using to spread and to stifle missions outreach. In summary, this doctrine states that there are two seeds or two lines of children that were born into this world, beginning all the way back with Adam and Eve. The seed of God, or the seed of life, and the seed of the serpent. And everyone that's born is born in one of those two lines. Seed of God or seed of the serpent. If you're born with the seed of God, then God has chosen you, you're his elect. If you're born through or into the seed of the serpent, God has chosen to bring himself glory through your eternal separation from himself, your destruction in hell. This is what might be termed hyper-Calvinism, a hyper-Calvinism. The two seeds. He has a wrong view of the church here, as you can see, and this is by him, and this is just a little bit. There's several writings of Daniel Parker that are available. This is just the first part of his essay on this. Look at the very first part here, part of the first line. I had but little doubt that my views on the two seeds would have been correctly understood, though perhaps not believed to be correct. But since circulating a few copies, I find that not only the enemies of the gospel misconstrue my remarks, but some who I have no doubt are friends to the truth. They fall short of the understanding me correctly. Therefore, I believe it a duty, and I owe the public and the gospel, as well as my brethren, to give a plain explanation of the ideas that I tend to convey in my view on the two seeds. A little overinflated view of himself, as you can see there in those words. So he calls himself here a Baptist, second line. I am not a Baptist, second paragraph, because other men are, but because I believe the Word and the Spirit of the living God does teach me to worship God in that way, and that the Baptist Church is the true and living Church of Jesus Christ. We said that when we were talking about autonomy. There's no such thing as the Baptist Church. Baptist churches don't believe that. There's no such thing as the Baptist Church. But he wanted that, so we have here his reaching into multiple churches to spread his doctrine. Doctrines of devils. Did the Bible warn that might come about? People would try to do that. And so he was infiltrating Baptist churches with this two-seed heresy. Baptist, here's like the sixth line down, second paragraph. The Baptist believes in the sovereignty of God. Then he goes on down through there, and let me find the one little statement. It's in a... Okay, look at the back sheet, last paragraph. Second page, last paragraph. The doctrine of election is a glorious theme for the Church of God, yet it proves that there is a non-elect. Well, you know what? I will give Daniel Parker this. At least he's being honest. If there is an elect, there's a non-elect, right? That's the danger of this wrong view of biblical election. There's a right view of biblical election. It's a Bible term. It's a Bible teaching. But the wrong view here, Calvinistic view, you have to say if there's elect, then what else is there? So I'll give him consistency. Yet it proves that there is a non-elect. The preachers of the cross have long been sounding the gospel of Christ in the truths of the sovereign grace of God to his elect. Oh, they'll preach about the fact that there are those that are elect or those that can be saved or will be saved. The word of eternal truth furnishing them with evidences of the truth of grace. But as yet to my knowledge, so here he's setting himself apart as this special, unique teacher with something new. But as yet to my knowledge have never been able to satisfy themselves, nor the church of God, as to the complete glory of God in the condemnation of the non-elect. So God's glory is complete in two things: the saving of the elect and the condemnation of the non-elect, the seed of the serpent. And if the Word of God gives us no account on the origin of the non-elect, by which His glory appears in their condemnation. Okay? According to Daniel Parker and his two-seed predestination doctrine, God's glory appears in the condemnation of the non-elect. That's the battle that J.M. Peck was facing. He got support to go start these churches, and Parker had beat him to the west and had spread this idea that, what's this idea of starting new churches? A, we got preachers out here, and B, people are either elect or they're not elect. Well, that'll put a dampening on the missionary spirit real quick, won't it? So, everyone was born with the seed, good or evil, and this alone determined one's destiny. So missionary activity becomes presumptuous. The elect belonged to God and didn't need missionaries, and the non-elect were without hope. Parker infiltrated many churches with his doctrine and made life very difficult for Luther Rice and John Mason Peck. The Baptist Encyclopedia describes Parker this way: uncouth in manners, slovenly in dress, unimpressive in appearance, his enthusiasm bordered on insanity, knew how to draw a crowd, knew how to get people, get attention. But it's interesting to note that he condemned religious newspapers, tracts, and books, and yet for 2 years he wrote and published a monthly paper, The Church Advocate, in which he set forth his distorted view of predestination in opposition to missions. But he did have a shrewd and brilliant mind. That's what he had, and he could certainly debate with the best of them. He died in 1844 and in Texas. So he was a constant challenge and problem to John Mason Peck. The Triennial Convention gets feedback from different associations out west that we don't need this, we don't need him. He's wasting his time or whatever it was. And so Peck had to then go, and you can see the bottom of page 1 there, turn to the Massachusetts Baptist Missionary Society. And they really laid it on him there. They gave him $5 a week for support. So that probably solved all of his problems there. But he resumed his work with fresh courage and was unwearied in it, traveling all over the states of Illinois, Indiana, and Missouri. He took a brief, not rest, but a change of labor toward the eastern states to get them interested in Western missions. Again, as you can see here, the West is anything Indiana, Illinois, West. So he, returning with over $1,000 pledged for a seminary at Rock Spring, Illinois, and he got a preacher training school started there. And 1831, his health broke down. He wasn't idle, and traveled the new states of the West. And next paragraph, its first work was in the Mississippi Valley. That was the far west of the day. Outposts of civilization were just beginning to push beyond the barrier of nature. And there was a great battle to be fought with the Catholics and battling fellow believers, predestinarian Baptist, battling the Catholics. In the middle of that paragraph, Rome is an antagonist that does not know when she is beaten. Next paragraph, Peck was the Home Mission Society in the West. He was it. He was his chief advisor. He was his local executive. Time and space would fail to tell of the variety and extent of his labors. He organized the Illinois Educational Society, Alton Seminary, Shirleft College, churches, educational institutions, societies, all owe their life to him. He was not merely active. He was wise and far-seeing. He made few mistakes. Last paragraph. In 1856, on the bottom of that page, in 1856 he died. A man worn out by his labors before his due time, for though he had reached the age of 66, his constitution should have made him good for 20 years more. But if other men have lived longer, few have lived lives more useful or left greater results. If we adopt Napoleon's test of greatness, which is this, what has he done? There has been no greater man in the history of American Baptists than John Mason Peck. And you'll find a little bit about him more in This Day in Baptist History and some discussions about his life. I believe also in American Crimson Red. I think we'll be reading about him a little bit as well. Okay, we are dismissed.